There are many misconceptions about Post-Stalin USSR. We will analyze and debunk them all. In this series, we will discuss many topics, such as state of the whole people, peaceful coexistence, the post-Stalin USSR economy, the fall of the USSR, and many more topics. So if you are interested in post-Stalin USSR, be it as a leftist or just as a curious person in general, just lay back and enjoy my video. Debunking Misconceptions about Post-Stalin USSR, Episode 1, State of the Whole People. Mao and Hoxha accused Post-Stalin USSR of destroying the dictatorship of the proletariat. Is this true? No, in fact, State of the Whole People was Stalin's idea. The term State of the Whole People was coined by Nikita Khrushchev though. So, anyway, let's see how Stalin created the idea of the state of the whole people by reading his works. Okay, but first, let's clear up what the state of the whole people even is. Basically, leaders of the Soviet Union from 1936 onwards believed that the Soviet Union is no longer a dictatorship of the proletariat, since all bourgeois elements have been eliminated inside the Soviet Union. They believed that the bourgeoisie as a class were eliminated inside the USSR as well. So there was no need anymore to oppress anyone inside the Soviet Union. The entire point of the dictatorship of the proletariat is to oppress the bourgeoisie, but since there were none left and nobody was to oppress anymore, the Soviet leadership believed that the Soviet Union is not a dictatorship of the proletariat anymore, and rather was something else, which they called the state of the whole people, though they still wanted to continue fighting the bourgeoisie outside the Soviet Union and purged revisionists and enemies of the worker state. Yeah, they still call themselves a worker state as well. Let's also verify this. Our society consists exclusively of free toilers of town and country, workers, peasants, intellectuals. Each of these strata may have special interests and express them by means of the numerous public organizations that exist. But since there are no classes, since the dividing lines between classes have been obliterated, since only a slight but not a fundamental difference between various strata in social society has remained, there can be no soil for the creation of contending parties. Where there are not several classes, there cannot be several parties, for a party is part of a class. Joseph Stalin interview between J. Stalin and Roy Howard, March 1st, 1936. Basically, Stalin is saying here that class antagonism inside the Soviet Union has been eliminated, and that the bourgeoisie have been eliminated as a class inside the Soviet Union. Did he think that classes still existed in the Soviet Union? Yes, which you may ask. Let's see.
Unlike bourgeois constitutions, the draft of the new constitution of the USSR proceeds from the fact that there are no longer any antagonistic classes in society, that society consists of two friendly classes, workers and peasants, that it is these classes, the laboring classes, that are in power, that the guidance of society by the state, the dictatorship, is in the hands of the working class, the most advanced class in society, that the constitution is needed for the purpose of consolidating a social order designed by and beneficial to the working people. Joseph Stalin on the draft constitution of the USSR. But in the USSR there are no longer such classes as the capitalists, the landlords, the kulaks, etc. In the USSR there are only two classes, workers and peasants, whose interests, far from being mutually hostile, are on the contrary friendly. Joseph Stalin on the draft constitution of the USSR. Basically, Stalin directly says here that the bourgeoisie and kulaks have been eliminated as a class and that there are only proletarians and peasants as classes. He also directly says that class antagonism inside the USSR has been abolished. Okay, so, what did he say about the class structure and about the state of the whole people about that term? Did he even talk about it? Yes, he did. Let's see what he wrote. It means that the exploitation of man by man has been abolished, eliminated, while the socialist ownership of the implements and means of production has been established as the unshakable foundation of our Soviet society. Prolonged applause. As a result of all these changes in the sphere of the national economy of the USSR, we now have a new socialist economy which knows neither crises nor unemployment, which knows neither poverty nor ruin, and which provides our citizens with every opportunity to lead a prosperous and cultured life. Such in the main are the changes of which have taken place in the sphere of our economy during the period from 1924 to 1936. In the conformity with these changes in the economic life of the USSR, the class structure of our society has also changed. Joseph Stalin on the draft constitution of the USSR. Basically, what Stalin says is that because the bourgeoisie and kulaks have been eliminated as a class, the class structure changed as well. There is no dictatorship of the proletariat anymore, since there are no bourgeoisie to oppress. Anyway, let's see what he says on the state of the whole people as a term.
1. First of all, about the amendment to Article 1 of the draft constitution. There are 4 amendments. Some propose that we substitute for the words state of workers and peasants the words state of working people. Others propose that we add the words and working intelligentsia to the words state of workers and peasants. A third proposes that we substitute for the words state of workers and peasants the words state of all the races and nationalities inhabiting the territory of the USSR. A fourth group proposes that we substitute for the word peasants the words collective farmers or toilers of socialist agriculture. Joseph Stalin on the draft constitution of the USSR. As you can see, there were already named proposals on the Stalin which intended to change the name of what the USSR state structure was. Some of them were even very similar to the term state of the whole people. The closest term to that was state of the working people. There was a lot of debate on what the USSR should have been called. Some were so tired of this debate that they just wanted to keep the old amendment of the constitution on the state structure. Personally, I think that most of these name proposals were cringe, especially state of all the races and nationalities inhabiting the territory of the USSR, which is firstly too long and secondly doesn't mention the people or workers, really. State of the whole people was the second best name proposal in my opinion. State of the working people, whose name sadly excludes pensioners, though, is better in my opinion, as it avoids confusion better. Let me know what your favorite name proposal is in the comments down below. Anyway, state of the whole people, as we can see, already existed back under Stalin. Even name proposals existed which intended to change the name of the state structure, some of which were extremely similar to it. Also, before we move on, I want to show you one more quote by Stalin. Entirely different was the picture presented by the USSR in 1936. By that time, the economic life of the country had undergone a complete change. The capitalist elements had been entirely eliminated, and the socialist system had triumphed in all spheres of economic life. Joseph Stalin, History of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Bolsheviks. Chapter 12. As we can see, Stalin also says here that all capitalist elements have been eliminated inside the Soviet Union, just like his successors. Stalin also admitted that there was no dictatorship of the proletariat anymore, and his socialist allies said the same. Let's read what he and they said.
The following 1936 characterization by Molotov of the relationship between workers and collective farm peasants was likewise echoed by the CPSU after 1953. Both the classes which exist in the USSR are building socialism and come within the system of socialist economy, but although both are in the same system of socialist economy, the working class in its work is bound with state socialist property, the property of the whole people, while the collective farm peasantry is bound up with the cooperative and collective farm property, which belongs to individual collective farms and to collective farm and cooperative associations. This connection with different forms of socialist property primarily determines the different position of these classes. This also determines the somewhat different paths of further development of each of them. What is common in the development of these two classes is that both are developing in the direction of communism. As this proceeds, the difference in their class positions will be gradually obliterated until here too the last remnants of class distinctions finally disappear. Even though Soviet authorities continued to argue the USSR was a dictatorship of the proletariat during the 1930s to 1950s, in practice, Soviet society was already moving away from the concept. To quote Eric von Ries, The Political Thought of Joseph Stalin, page 146, 141. From a practical point of view, the 1936 Constitution's failure to claim an exclusively proletarian character reflected the new reality of the introduction of general and equal suffrage, which brought positive discrimination in favor of the urban working class to an end. The proletarian dictatorship, for what it had been worth, was in practice thereby abolished. According to Molotov, Stalin admitted privately that the proletarian dictatorship was a thing of the past. In his speech of the 1st of October 1938, the latter observed that in its first class stage the proletarian state served to oppress the bourgeoisie. Soviet power was now in the second stage, when power becomes the power of the toilers. I won't say that it is now a class power, that it is the power of one class. In a discussion with the Polish Communist period in May 1946, he remarked that in essence there was no dictatorship of the proletariat in the USSR now either. We have Soviet democracy. The reason was that there were only external enemies to suppress. The party rules adopted at the 19th Party Congress in 1952 removed all specific references to the working class. The party was redefined as a union of like-minded communists, organized from people from among the working class, the toiling peasants, and the toiling intelligentsia. Anyway, as we can see, Stalin believed that the dictatorship of the proletariat was gone. However, he believed that it was still a worker state, as we said. Did Nikita Khrushchev also call the Soviet Union a worker state under him? Yes, let's read what he said. Also, I translated the quote from him from Russian into English, so I will just put the original Russian quote in the description so you can search the text up in one of my sources. The power of our society and state in connection with the growth of the dictatorship of the proletariat into a nation-state isn't only weakening, but on the contrary, it rapidly increases, because to the old sources of our power are added new sources. Alongside with the constant increase of economic potential, the social base of our state has grown stronger and expanded. Society has become one and monopholic, like it has never been before. And in this is the main source of power of the state. Every worker, every peasant, every intelligentsia can say, we are the state, its politics is our politics. The task to develop and strengthen the state, the task to protect it from all kinds of encroachments, this is our common task. Standing ovation. But why is the state actually kept, although the main thing that gave birth to it, which is class antagonism, is gone? The reason is that it has not yet exhausted the tasks that society can only solve with the help of the state. These tasks and the functions of the socialist state are clearly defined in the draft program of our party. Nikita Khrushchev, the 22nd Congress of the CPSU. The state that emerged as the dictatorship of the proletariat has turned in the new present stage into the state of the whole people, into an organ of expression of the interests and the will of the entire people. Because the working class is the most advanced, most organized force in Soviet society, it exercises its leadership role in the period of expanded communist construction. The working class will complete its role as the leader of society with the construction of communism, when classes will disappear. Nikita Khrushchev, the 22nd Congress of the CPSU. Just like Stalin, Khrushchev says that the USSR only consists of workers, peasants and intelligentsia. He also says that class antagonism is gone and that the USSR now is a worker state. He also said, just like Stalin, that in the USSR the bourgeoisie and kulaks are gone. The dictatorship of the proletariat, born in the Socialist Revolution, played a world historical role, ensuring victory of socialism in the USSR. At the same time, in the process of building socialism, it itself has undergone changes. In connection with the liquidation of the exploiting classes, the function of suppressing their resistance has died out. Nikita Khrushchev, the 22nd Congress of the CPSU. Workers' membership also increased after Stalin in the CPSU. Table 5.1 reflects the fact that during the 1930s and 1940s, white-collar workers and intelligentsia were heavily favored in the party's recruitment policies. By the mid-1950s, they were actually the majority of party members, while many workers represented less than 1/3 of the total membership. Since the 1950s, however, there has been a steady tendency for the proportion of white-collar workers and intelligentsia to decrease, and that of many workers to increase. Through the early 1960s, manual workers were about 45% of all the new recruitments to the party. Since the 23rd Party Congress in 1966, well over half of all new recruitments have been industrial workers, and in the major industrial areas the number has been between 60 and 70%. In the most recent period, 1971 to 1976, many workers have been 57.6% of our new party members. Specialists, for example, the professional intelligentsia, on the other hand, were only 24.2% of recruits in 1971 to 1972, compared to 27.3% in 1962 to 1970, and 26.4% in 1952 to 1955. There is no evidence that many workers are being pushed into the background in the CPSU. Anyway, I edited the table in the top left corner that you can see. And it also says there, congresses who are workers and peasants has increased significantly. At the 1952 Party Congress, these groups represented only 15% of all delegates, but in 1959 they comprised 31%. On the other hand, it must be pointed out that in 1966, higher level party and government officials, for example full-time members of the party or state apparatus, who represented only 2.1% of all party members, were 40% of all delegates to the 23rd Party Congress and 81% of all those elected to the Central Committee. If you were wondering, this is Albert Zeminsky's book. Is the red flag still flying? Pages 88 to 89. Okay, so I want to show you one more quote about when and even if it is necessary, the dictatorship of the proletariat. A quote by Khrushchev, okay? Let me start quoting him. Naturally, that when socialism went completely and ultimately in our country, and we entered the period of extended construction of communism, the conditions that necessitated the dictatorship of the proletariat disappeared. Its eternal tasks were fulfilled. Nikita Khrushchev, the 22nd Congress of the CPSU. What he says here is that the dictatorship of the proletariat in the revolution, and as long as the bourgeoisie exist, and kulaks of course, and their elements, the dictatorship of the proletariat is necessary. In conclusion, this state of the whole people was basically Stalin's idea, but Khrushchev gave it a name, and Khrushchev still saw the dictatorship of the proletariat necessary at this stage, and increased workers' membership.